Go to a restaurant, cafe or sandwich shop and you'll either be asked if you have allergies or there will be labels on the food, at least there should be. Why, therefore, are food allergies on the rise? Why are more and more children unable to eat this, that or the other? And is science any closer to finding a cure? Welcome to Roundtable. I'm David Foster. There is no simple answer to why more people have become allergic to certain foods. I suppose if there was, we would have found it. Living environment, lifestyle, changes in diet, exposure to bugs all play a part. But what is clear is the food given to a child in the first year of his or her life can make a huge difference.
It fuels our body but can also be fatal. Food allergies have increased in the last few decades. Why are they on the rise? And what can be done to make us less sensitive to the world around us? In 2016, a teenage girl collapsed on a flight from London to Nice after eating a baguette that contained sesame seeds. The allergen was not listed on the wrapper and she died in hospital. Deaths from food allergies are still rare but cause great anxiety in sufferers. Charity Allergy UK says between 6 to 8% of children have food allergies compared to less than 3% of adults. There are 8 major food allergens: milk, egg, peanut, tree nuts, wheat, soy, fish and crustacean shellfish. Reactions vary from an itchy mouth to anaphylaxis, which can develop quickly and cause death. Of the 15 million Americans who have food allergies, 5.9 million are children under 18. That's around 1 in 13. Westernised countries as well as places such as China are seeing a rise, but it's still unclear why. The World Health Organization promotes exclusive breastfeeding of babies for 6 months before introducing other foods, and not to delay the introduction of allergenic foods, as it may increase the risk. Researchers are working hard on prevention as well as desensitisation by exposing patients to minuscule amounts. And this year, British scientists announce a far more accurate blood test to diagnose peanut allergy.
Show me that we really need to find better ways. We need to find better tests to diagnose food allergies.
It is possible at any point in life to develop an allergy to something previously tolerated. Could science be on the cusp of big advancements in treatment and possibly even a cure? The types of food we eat and the way we produce it have changed, and countries are looking at tightening up labelling laws. Could gut bacteria research hold the answer, or will some foods be permanently taken off the menu?
Very well, let the conversation begin. Joining us via Skype from Cork in Ireland, we have Liam O'Mahony, Professor of Immunology at University College Cork, and with me in the studio, Sarah Wren, who set up the gluten-free restaurant, Oscar and Bentleys, and Michelle Berriedale-Johnson, the editor of Foods Matter and director of the Free From Awards. Thank you all very much for coming on this programme. It's made a lot of headlines. Liam, you first of all, why the big rise in the number of people who have allergic reactions?
Well, exactly as you said in your introduction, there's no one reason, but we feel that the changing lifestyle, changing environment, changing foods that we're eating, they're all contributing and possibly interacting to make things much worse than any single change alone. And some of the commonalities, I guess, are changing exposure to microbes, the changing in increase in processing of foods, the early introduction of fruits and veg seem to be important through their interactions with microbes, in addition to their nutritive factors. Living up and growing up on a farm, exposed to animals, exposed to green leafy spaces, everything seems to be important, and everything seems to be changing at the moment.
What is this hygiene hypothesis I read about?
So the original hygiene hypothesis, the observation was kids born into families with more older siblings were less likely to get hay fever. And the thought was that these kids were exposed to more viruses and more infections very early in life. That's why it was called the hygiene hypothesis. But it has moved on, I think, that we feel now most bacteria are healthy, they're not dangerous, they're not infections. So the biodiversity hypothesis is really what we talk about today, that exposure to a diversity of microbes and environments, particularly early in life, seems to be protective.
Liam, I'll come back to you in just a moment and talk about whether we are living in a bubble that has too few good bacteria and too many bad elements in it. But let's bring both of you in, if we may, because you both have personal stories to tell. And in your case, Sarah, it was your mother who became seriously ill that led you to open a free-from restaurant. What happened to your mum?
It was about 10 years ago now. She became incredibly unwell, and we really couldn't find out why. There was a lot of thought that she would have some sort of cancer, because that was the sort of symptoms she was displaying. But she was becoming more and more tired, unable to function properly, and probably went through almost a year of testing before they actually found out what was wrong.
Excuse me for interrupting. Your mum,
Okay.
at that point, was in her 60s?
Yes.
And nothing had shown itself before that?
There were, looking back in hindsight, there were possibly things that may have been indicators.
But nothing nasty.
But nothing drastic.
Nothing really
no.
nasty. So did anybody say to her or to you, this is why it's happened now?
No. It wasn't until, and it was really getting to last resort time. She was very, very, very poorly at this stage, and they had a camera inside her small intestine, at which point they discovered that all the nice little areola that should take in all the nutrients were completely blocked. And basically, where you should be absorbing all your food was completely stopped. Food was just passing through her, and she was basically starving to death.
So should we ask Liam a question about this one? Is somebody who's been relatively healthy but shown perhaps some irritation until into her 60s, why would she suddenly develop? Because as a child she would have been exposed to perhaps a less hygiene aware environment, all of the things that you're talking about. Why suddenly at a particular age?
So I think a lot of these issues become apparent more with age, actually, because as the body ages as well, you know, systems are changing, metabolism is changing, the microbes are changing, the diet is changing, and some diseases may have been there for a long time already, actually, and the manifestation really is only seen after many, many years.
So you could get, and let's bring Michelle in at this point, you could get a serious allergy, maybe a peanut allergy, an egg allergy, a shellfish allergy, later in life, and it could be particularly dangerous.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're all autoimmune conditions, aren't they? Basically, you know, your mum had celiac disease, which is when the immune system turns on itself and starts to attack things which are actually perfectly harmless, which is what an allergy is. You know, an allergy is when your immune system looks at a peanut and thinks, oh, it's something terrible, when it's not. It's actually a very nutritious and wholesome food. So that they all seem to be part of these autoimmune conditions when the immune system just goes haywire and starts to react against things which it should never have reacted against. And as Liam says, maybe, you know, the longer we live, the more we subject ourselves to unhealthy foods, stressful environments, all kinds of chemical, other kinds of pollution, electromagnetic pollution, who knows, all of these things. So the immune system, our immune systems, personal ones, become dysregulated and start doing all these strange things.
Do any of you, Liam, come in on this one as well, do any of you have a particular thing you think is the most likely to have caused this increase? Liam went through a whole list of things, but do you think it's pollution? Do you think it's lack of good gut bacteria? Anything that you've noticed in your studies?
The gut bacteria, you know, as Liam said, seems to be, at the moment, the most popular hypothesis because it makes sense. You know, we have these trillions of bacteria, which we've never really, Liam, you obviously will back this up, we've never really looked at before. We've never really been aware of them before. And our lifestyles, and particularly the use of antibiotics, has actually reduced that diversity. There are all kinds of studies of tribes who live in the middle of Africa who eat this incredible variety of foods, and they have an enormous variety of gut bacteria, whereas us, living on burgers and chips, have reduced that enormously. And these gut bacteria are incredibly important and are incredibly important for the immune system. And, you know, Liam's the one to ask about this, but that's really to keep the immune system healthy. We need this variety of gut bacteria, and maybe that seems to be the leading theory. All the other things are important, but maybe that's actually where it's going.
Liam, I'm going to come to the idea of personalised gut bacteria a little bit later, if I may. But Sarah, in your experience, okay, we're talking about gut bacteria here, is that, you think, possibly the biggest cause of all of this?
Certainly with my mum's case, I don't think so. My mum's always eaten a very, very healthy, widespread diet. And one of the things that I think is quite interesting at the moment is it's brilliant that there is a lot more attention being paid to these things. But I think one of the reasons we're seeing such huge jumps in growth is actually that we just didn't measure these things before. Because when we look at how my mother coped with life, she was working and things like that, she used to have some extreme exhaustion problems that were never, we never found out why, which could well have been caused by this. And then if we go back through our family history, we can see members of our family who ailed.
Well, I had a note here that's saying your ancestors died from allergies, you believe?
Quite possibly, quite possibly, because they didn't live necessarily as old as one would have expected, and they just sort of wasted away. And looking back at the time, everyone it used to be, the old lady sort of wasted away and that was it. But actually, if you look at it, you go, that was probably a food allergy. She was probably had got more and more unable to digest food because she was eating something she was allergic to.
Yeah, what's this about? Sorry.
No. I was just going to say, I think we need.
You don't have to wait your turn on this programme. You can say any time you want to anybody here.
I'm in there. I was only going to say that there's a difference between an intolerance to a food, which means that you don't digest it. Again, defer to Liam here, but where you don't digest it very well and you have problems with it, and an allergic reaction, which is an immune reaction, where the immune system comes into play, and which, in the extreme example, can cause anaphylaxis. So they're slightly different. I think.
They're very different, aren't they?
Well, they're very different. And as people age, so they tend to probably digest less efficiently, and so therefore they're more likely to get food intolerances. And I absolutely agree with you that this was not diagnosed. I mean, until the last 20 years, nobody even mentioned it.
So this leads me to, are we seeing necessarily a massive increase in allergies and intolerances, or are we seeing fads of people saying, oh, I've got this wrong with me, I've got this wrong with me?
It's not fads. It's not fads.
None of it?
There's a few people it is fads, but in general it's not fads. But I think people are more aware of their own bodies and what they're eating, and so therefore they're more able to see where they've got a problem and then seek medical help because they can see, for instance, they always have a bad reaction to dairy. I think actually it's knowledge that's prompting it to seem like there's an awful lot more people.
Okay, Liam, you mentioned, you want to say something first? Please do.
Yeah, I think I would place celiac disease as a separate entity to food allergies, of course. And, the word celiac actually comes from a Greek word. So celiac disease was recognized, a long, long, long time ago. And exactly along the lines that you described, with failure to thrive, failure to absorb the food. And, this type of immune reaction to wheat gluten has been there for a long, long time. Whereas food allergies, which is more of an incorrect immune response to something you shouldn't respond to, is really a failure of immune tolerance. You are not educating your immune system in an appropriate way that allows your immune system to distinguish between something it should react to and shouldn't react to. I always say, the baby has to learn to walk, to talk, to socialize. The immune system has to do the exact same thing at the same time. It needs to learn to walk, to talk, and to socialize. It needs to understand what's in its environment, recognize what's not dangerous, and be ready to react to the things that are dangerous.
Where are you medical detectives in trying to solve these problems?
So from my point of view, I think a critical factor is that actual interaction between microbes and what we eat. I think there is an additive detrimental effect by a change in the microbes and a change in what we eat. And remember, the microbes in your gut, what do they eat? They eat what you eat. And they generate a whole range of metabolites, many of which we know are immunoregulatory. And so this interaction, I think, is actually the key here. So by answering just one side of the equation, i.e. microbes and diet, may not give us the solution we want. We need to address both at the same time, the microbes that we have and also what we eat.
I see you said to one of our producers that the only current cure is immunotherapy, taking probiotics. But could you not just change your lifestyle as well and see an improvement?
So the immunotherapy is not with probiotics, it's with allergens that you give in very, very small amounts, and then you increase over time, and you induce a state of lower reactivity, so you can tolerate an accidental exposure, for instance, to a peanut. But it doesn't really change the immune system that you're tolerating in an immunological sense. But yes, changing lifestyle, I think, is key. I really think that that's at the basis. and will help a lot with, eating good, healthy food, fresh foods, non-processed, going for a walk often in the forest. I know these all sound very woolly things, but actually these are nature's way of helping educate the immune system.
Okay, so you two.
But those will prevent, Liam, surely. They won't actually address an existing allergy. So, I mean, that's fantastic, and obviously we should all do that and hopefully prevent. But if you've already developed an intolerance, if you've already got having an allergic reaction to dairy or peanut or whatever it might be, improving your lifestyle is not going to actually change that allergic reaction, is it?
So I think it will help, but it will not be the cure. Absolutely. But I think for the cure to work, you probably also need to change the lifestyle that has caused this to happen in the first place.
And which leads me to ask both of you, in the time that you've been doing Food Matters and you've had your restaurant, have you noticed people's attitude change? Yes,
I would say, well, I would say we've been doing the Free From Food Awards for 12, 13 years now. And if you just look at the food that people are now creating for those who have an intolerance, whatever it may be, it has improved out of all measure. It is now very nutritionally aware. It's using a lot of superfoods. It's actually looking to make a really healthy diet. So I think there has been a big change there. What do you think, Sarah?
I think there's definitely been a big change for the better. I think there's a long way to go. I think we have a massive problem with education, both for consumers that have allergies.
And Liam's nodding in agreement with that.
Yeah. We all agree about that. Yeah.
Even the consumers that have the allergies, I had somebody come into the restaurant, they were eating their pudding. They were halfway through their pudding when they just threw away, oh, this doesn't contain nuts, does it? I'm allergic. At the end of the meal. My heart nearly went through the floor because I'm now trying to think, what have they eaten? How was it prepared? What happened? And I said, you didn't tell us. And they were like, oh, well, I didn't like to make a fuss. And that's in an allergen-aware restaurant. They didn't want to make a fuss. They hadn't told me they had a nut allergy. Now, thankfully,
Well, that's bonkers, isn't it?
But it happens all the time.
Oh, well, there you go.
It does happen.
No accounting for folk, Liam, yeah.
Yeah, I think even if you look at the number of new fast food outlets that are opening in the UK, in Ireland, in many countries around the world, it's on a straight line increase year on year. So actually, I think some people are getting the message, but there's still a lot of people who are not eating correctly. And, I ask some of my students sometimes, do you know how to cook? And if they say yes, and if you start to probe a little bit, they think putting a pizza in the oven, that's cooking.
Yeah.
So really, there's a huge educational need here, really huge.
Let me ask you two specific questions. This is the first one, Liam. You said there's research, and you've mentioned the farm environment before, and I know you started life on a farm. There's research looking into transplanting a farm environment to an urban environment. What's the story there?
Yes, so this is all part of the effort to improve indoor living of the future. We're not all going to be living on farms in the future. We spend 90% of our time now indoors. So can we transplant some of those protective effects? For instance, can we bring some of these bacteria into our living environments? But also the dietary part. Can we improve our recommendations and our education about to people to eat fresh foods, to eat fermented foods that would be more typical in a farming environment, for instance. So I think it's a lot of education as much as technology and science. It's a lot of education as well.
And the other one is personalized gut bacteria. I mean, do you get that by eating fermented foods like baking your own bread, etc., etc., or is this a medical idea where you sort of say, person A needs to have this, and we will make sure that these are the bacteria this person has?
Yeah, so I think, given that the sequencing techniques we've been using, we do see a huge difference in the types of bacteria even healthy people have. But it becomes more consistent if you look at the metabolites that those bacteria are making. So, it seems you can have different bacteria, but it's really the end important part is what those bacteria are making. And so from a personalized point of view, you can imagine that certain people from a different genetic background or a different type of lifestyle, that there are bacteria that would suit them better. And I think that's where it's going, but it's not that every individual needs a different, population of bacteria. We will see groupings of people that certain bacteria will work better in.
Are we going to see a time, Sarah, Michelle, when your restaurant, perhaps your website, is advocating somebody go into the particular health food store or your place and buys a pot of bacteria?
I hope not.
It's not mad,
No,
is
no,
it?
it's not. And people are serving insects now in restaurants, so why not? Yeah.
I hope not, because although these things are very serious, I don't want to take away from the joy of eating.
No.
Because actually the joy of food should still be maintained. And that's one of the big things that we've tried to do, is actually give people a safe environment to come and enjoy their food and be spoiled.
Perhaps your restaurant's too clean. You know, these are all sort of weird things, aren't
Yeah,
they?
no,
You
no,
know, we
they
always
are.
thought cleanliness, well, they said it was next to godliness.
Yeah.
Now we're too clean and we're making ourselves
I'm going to
ill.
keep it clean.
Good.
Yeah. No, I think, I so agree that food is there to be enjoyed. It's one of the greatest pleasures of life, which is why it's so hard for people with food allergies that they can't go out and enjoy them. So we do need awareness. It's raising awareness. Now, this awful story of poor Natasha, who died, has done a huge job in raising people's awareness. People who knew nothing about food allergy are beginning to understand this is serious and it can horribly impact on your quality of life.
I have to say I've got huge admiration for her family, because at an incredibly difficult time, they have really gone out of their way to raise the awareness of this. And in some ways, I hope that's some form of healing for them. But it is an incredibly difficult time, and I do admire them for what they've done.
Liam, we're going to come to you as we sort of come to wrap up. I've got questions for you about mothers, about babies, about those early years. What mothers eat, very important, yeah?
Absolutely. We believe immune programming starts at the point of conception, not when the baby is born. And the baby's immune system gets prepared for the environment that it's been born into. And part of that preparation is based on what mom is eating. And then from the time of birth, everything from method of delivery, early life antibiotics, breastfeeding, there's a significant proportion of the energy in breast milk that the baby can't use at all. It's not meant for the baby, it's meant for the microbes in the gut. So there are many factors early in life. And again, we have to keep in mind here, interaction is key. One factor on its own may not have a huge detrimental effect, but if you, let's say, all three factors together, it has a much more significant effect.
No more elective C-sections. No more elective C-sections. True?
So, no, I think C-sections are, have saved the lives.
No, but I'm saying an elective one. That you do it because you want to go on holiday in a week and a half or something like that.
I think all of these are individual considerations, and people should be educated about the consequences. And yes, if you have a C-section, the microbiome, there is a delay in the acquisition of the microbiome, the development of the microbiome. But perhaps there are ways that we can replace that microbiome. That's, I guess, where we're looking to. And you mentioned cleaning practices. That's one of the reasons we all live so long and much healthier, because we clean, we keep the pathogens away. But there is a consequence, again, like C-sections. And by understanding that consequence, we can replace the good parts that we've been missing.
Perhaps we all get just a little bit too much information, but I think it's vital that this is being discussed. I'm just going to quote something from the Centre for Disease Control, the United States one. It said in 2013, it released a study showing that food allergies among children increased nearly 50% between 1997 and 2011. It must be something that we're doing. You worried about it all, generally?
Definitely, because if it goes on increasing at that rate, where are we going to be in another 20 years' time? How many kids, all the kids in the classroom are going to be allergic to something? They're already, if you go into primary school classrooms now, you'll find in every classroom there are 4 or 5 kids who have serious allergies to something or other.
Yeah.
Worldwide today, there are 1 billion people have some kind of an allergic disorder. And by 2050, the predictions are, if it keeps going at this rate, it will be 5 billion people. So it's really something we have to address.
Okay, in your research, we don't have very long, just very quickly tell me what the most important thing that you and others in your field are doing is, in your opinion.
I think we are only scratching the surface of what these microbes are doing in us and on us. It's not just the microbes in the gut, they're in the lung, they're on the skin, they're interacting with the environment, with the diet. And unfortunately, we have to get more complicated before we'll get more simpler with our recommendations.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the next thing that's going to be happening where you work in your restaurant. Have you got any specific ideas that can help with all of this?
We're just producing as much food as we can that will feed as many people with different allergens as possible. We actually look at 16 allergens.
And you did say there were more than the ones that we mentioned.
There are 14 serious ones, but a couple of others which people believe ought to be on
17. 17 allergens is what we actually measure, so that when customers, and this is done because of the customers we've had in. So from the customers we've had over the years, we've sort of gone, actually, these are what we need to be aware of.
We're learning the whole time.
So we're learning the whole time.
And Michelle, when Liam said go for a walk in the woods, I thought about the fact that you're allergic to mushrooms.
Well, there you are, you see. There is no product, there's no food that somebody, somewhere, is not going to be allergic to.
Listen, thank you very much, Nick. Good luck with everything you're doing, and congratulations to you two for making it a subject that we can talk about more and more openly. I think it's only by doing that that we'll actually come to some kind of conclusion. Liam from Cork,
thank you.
Good luck. Enjoy the West of Ireland. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Roundtable. I'm David Foster. We hope to have your company next time. Until then, goodbye.